Welcome back to The Explainer. Looking back at history, there are certain events that leave a permanent, visible scar on American democracy. Today, we're focusing on 1993, and specifically the tragedy at Mount Carmel in Waco, Texas. It's a heavy subject, for sure, but understanding what happened during this grueling 51-day standoff is absolutely crucial if we want to grasp the really complex dynamics between state power and civilian defiance. 51 days, 76 bodies, one unsolved mystery. These aren't just statistics. They completely distill an immense scale of human tragedy down to its absolute core. It's a historical mystery that genuinely continues to grip the nation, even decades later. So we're going to unpack exactly how those 51 days unfolded, and why the loss of those lives still haunts the historical record today.
Section 1. The Mount Carmel Standoff. The Spark of Conflict.
Well, every historical inferno begins with a spark, right? Back in 1993, the ATF executed a raid on Mount Carmel. This was a compound in Waco, Texas, housing a religious group and their leader, David Koresh. The government suspected they were stockpiling illegal weapons. And what happened next is almost unbelievable. You have everyday citizens on one side and literally the world's most advanced military force on the other. A deadly gunfight suddenly erupted, and the citizens inside simply refused to surrender. Section 2. 51 Days of Siege, a ticking clock. Okay, let's dive into this timeline, because the escalation is kind of staggering. Within days of those initial suspicions, the ATF raids the compound. Mere hours later, a deadly gunfight breaks out. And then, everything just grinds to a halt. It turns into a torturous 51-day ticking clock. For almost 2 entire months, the FBI and the U.S. military surrounded this single house with helicopters and massive tanks. We are talking about one of the longest sieges in modern American history. But it wasn't just physical tanks out there. The forces outside started using severe psychological warfare. They cut off the electricity, they blocked all the food supplies, and honestly, perhaps most terrifyingly, they blasted these horrific sounds over loudspeakers all night long. Just imagine that sensory contrast. You've got the massive, silent steel of the tanks right outside, completely juxtaposed with this relentless, manufactured terror that was designed specifically to break the mental spirit of the men, women, and children trapped inside.
Section 3. The April 19 Apocalypse. The stand turns to ash.
Those barricades and the psychological tactics, they were really just the preamble. Because then we get to April 19th, 1993. The day the standoff literally turned into an apocalypse. And this specific date is exactly why such a chilling suspense still lingers over the whole Waco event. That afternoon, the entire compound was consumed by a massive fire. There was no peaceful surrender, no standard tactical breach. It ended in a catastrophic inferno that essentially turned the home into a giant, inescapable furnace. The historical record leaves us with this deeply harrowing detail from that afternoon. As the flames reached the sky, the cries of children could be heard from within, yet the forces outside remained silent. It's incredibly heavy, but it is so vital to honor the human element here. This wasn't just some tactical maneuver on paper. This was a real-time tragedy unfolding right behind a heavily armed perimeter. Section 4. Competing Claims, the Fire, an Unsolved Mystery. So how did that apocalyptic fire actually start? This is the core of the whole thing, where the historical record splits into two intensely polarized narratives. The government claimed that the residents intentionally set the fire themselves in a coordinated mass suicide pact, while eyewitnesses and independent investigators suggest something entirely different. They point to evidence that those military tanks outside actually launched highly flammable tear gas canisters directly into the building, which inadvertently sparked the blaze. And this brilliantly illustrates the lingering suspense we're still dealing with today. You have a massive furnace ignited by an outside force, completely contrasting with a mass suicide pact orchestrated from within. It's this exact clash of evidence, the official government stance up against the claims of eyewitnesses on the ground, that cements Waco as a deeply controversial, unsolved mystery. It forces us to really question how we look at the evidence itself.
Section 5. The Haunting Aftermath. When the smoke cleared.
Regardless of how that fire actually sparked, the flames did eventually die down. And what was left behind forces us to confront a staggering reality: 76. When the smoke finally cleared over Mount Carmel, 76 bodies were recovered from those ashes. It's a devastating number that really requires a moment of pause. That's 76 citizens dead on American soil after a standoff with their own government's forces.
And if you look closely at that horrific toll, you find an even more tragic number: 20. Among the 76 people pulled from the wreckage, more than 20 were innocent children. It's this specific detail that really transforms the whole event from a controversial police action into a permanent, haunting stain on our history.
So, what does this all mean for us today? Why keep studying Waco? Because the whole enigma leaves us with these profound, completely unresolved questions. Could those kids have been saved if different tactics were used? Did a powerful nation, equipped with literally the most advanced military capabilities on Earth, use excessive force against its own people? The whole tragedy serves as a really vital case study for us on the limits of state power, the real-world consequences of excessive force, and the absolute need for government accountability.
We're going to end our explainer today exactly where the source material leaves us, with a painful, provocative question just staring back at us from the ashes. Who really won that day? Was it a triumph of the law, or was it a display of cruelty that left a permanent mark on history? The standoff at Mount Carmel might have ended back in 1993, but the questions it ignited, they are absolutely still burning today. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this complex piece of history.